Welcome back. The next thing that I would like to add to this app is to be able to select and unselect members here, because we can see them in our dialog here, but we cannot select them and make them visible here on the screen yet. So let's make them selectable and unselectable. Therefore, what we will start with is a new model. So I'm just going to create a new model here, which is going to be a new class called selected members. And now in this selected class or selected members class, which is a data class, I want to pass in two values. One of them is a val ID, which is a string, and we're going to make it an empty string for now. And then we need another one for the image that we want to display. So string will be also an empty one. All right, and then this whole thing should be parcelable. So parcelable, and once we add that, I want to implement the members here and add the parcelable members here. All right, so here read string. Well, if we do that, we need to force it here. Describe contents returns a 0. Write to parcel. Well, here we need to write the string. So let's do that real quick. Write string ID and write string image. And this of course only works if you have here with dest equal with dest, and make sure that your parcel is not nullable. All right, so that is it for this select members class here. All right, then for some reason I've described contents twice here, but it should only be there once. So okay, that's it. That's our selected members data class. Then we need another adapter, because we want this to be displayed as a recycler view, right? So here on the members, select members currently is a text view, but it should be a recycler view. And if you use a recycler view, you of course need to have an adapter, and that's exactly what we need to prepare now. All right, so let's go ahead and create a new adapter here, which will be card members member list items adapter. And this will be an open class, which requires a context and a list. So here, nothing too new. We've used that multiple times already, right? So private val context, which will be of type context. And then we need the private val list, which will be an array list of, and here it comes, selected member or members. So that's the class that we prepared just a minute ago. We need to import context here, Android content, that one, and then this should inherit from recycler view dot adapter and recycler view dot view holder. All right, so then when we do that, we of course need to implement the members. So let's do that. And also, as always, we will need our own view holder class. So here, class my view holder, as we've done many times before. The same goes for the interface on click listener, because we want to be able to click onto elements here as well. So let's implement the on click listener as well as always, and also the function to have a set on click listener. Now we of course need to prepare an on click listener variable here at the very top, a global variable, which is going to be an on click listener nullable. All right, and now let's implement those functions here that were auto generated for us. So in create view holder, we need to define how it's going to look like, and it's going to be layout inflator from context inflate, and now inflate what exactly? Well, the layout that we want to use. So here r.layout.item card selected member. So I'm going to call it. So now let's import R, and here let's make sure that we pass all the variables that are required. So then we need to pass in the parent, which is the view group here. And then we need to define the settings for our attached to root, which we usually use false for. All right, and of course we want to return that as a view holder. So my view holder, that's the one that we prepared, and then we can return it. Okay, so that's our onCreate view holder, and we just use this layout that we prepared before in the last video, where we have this little icon here for now, but we want to have multiple ones. So we want to have the image of the user, and then we want to have the plus button as the last entry, so to speak. So if we have 3 entries, then we want to have 3 images of the users or members who are assigned to the card, and then we want to have on top of that this little plus button next to it. All right, so that's what we need to define in our onBind view holder. But first, while it's here, or because it's here, let's also implement this get item count, which is always going to be list.size. So we want to return list.size. Okay, now let's implement the onBind view holder. So here we need to define how every single view holder should behave, or every single list item, and therefore we need to get the model, which is going to be the list position as always. Then we need to check if the holder is my view holder, and if that's the case, well, then what we want to do is, if we see that the list size is -1, so if position is equal to list.size -1, then we know that we only need to make our plus button visible. So then we can make the add member icon, this plus button, visible. So here, holder.itemView.iv add member visibility is set to view.visible, and at the same time holder.itemView.iv selected member image visibility should be set to view.gone. And of course, in all other cases where we do have people inside of our list, we want to make it the other way around. So this one will be gone, even though we then later on have to see if we want it to be gone or not. And this one will be visible. Okay, so this one is the add member button, this button here. And I said that I want to make it visible, but let's see how it looks if we get rid of it, right? If we make it go away. And then of course, when we display the selected member image, we can see that selected member image doesn't have a real image. It just has a user placeholder, which could be fine. If you want that, that would be fine. But I want to use the specific image of the user that we have added to the card. So we need to use glide here. All right, and whenever we used glide, we had this code here. So let me add that in real quick. It's always this glide code where we say with context load the image that we want to use, and we get the image from the model, and the model is our user. Okay, so if we look at it, it's more specifically, it's our selected members, and there we have the image. So we take this image here and we display it. So we get the image, then we crop the image, we use the placeholder, which is our IC user placeholder, and then we put that into our IV selected member image, which is this image that currently is only containing the placeholder. Now on top of that, I would like to give them an onClick listener. So here, holder.itemView.setOnClickListener is going to check if the onClick listener exists. So if it's not null, then run the onClick event. So here, onClick. Because the onClick listener is nullable, we need to add those 2 exclamation marks here. All right, so that's the adapter. And of course, we want to make this adapter visible. And where should it be visible? Well, it's in the card list screen. So here, card details activity, that's where we want to display it. So let's create a new function which will take care of that. So you can see this code here is getting pretty long because, well, we do a lot of stuff just in the cards activity. So this is pretty much where most of the stuff happens, right? So here, private fun, set up selected members list. That's how I'm going to call this function. And here I first of all need a variable which contains the card assigned members list, which should be our mboards. Do we have it somewhere so it's easier to just copy it? Well, we can start with that. So it's going to be mboard details, task list at the task list position, cards at the card position. So here mcard position and dot assigned to. Okay, so this is what we want to use, of course. So we want to get the assigned users, and these are the ones that are the assigned members to the card. All right, and then what do we want to do with them? Well, we want to do basically the same thing as we did in the members list dialog, where we have this double for loop where we get the selected members, but we want to do slightly different things. So we don't only want to set the select to true, but we actually want to do something in there. Okay, so let's copy this code and reuse it because we're gonna need it in our function down here in our setup select list members. So I will need another variable here, which is going to be selected members list, which is an array list of selected members, which in the end is going to be an empty array list for now. And we need to import the class here. So let's import it real quick. And then what I want to do here is I want to run this for loop that I just copied. And as it seems I didn't copy it correctly, so copy it from here, this for loop, from your members list dialog, and then go down to your new function that we're creating and put it in here. So what we're checking is for the indices, and then we're checking for this card assigned members list. And as it seems I have called it slightly differently here. And then we check the member details list at the ID. And for every single entry, what we do is we say val selected member, because now we have a selected member, which will be selected members. So a new object of our selected members. And now we can take the members details list ID and the selected members list image. Okay, so basically we check for the members details list, so all of the people who are assigned to the board itself. Then we check, are they the same that we have that are assigned to the card itself? If that's the case, then give me the ID and the image and store it in this variable here. And then what we can do is we can add it to our selected members list. So then we can just go ahead and say add that selected member. So what that for loop will do, or double for loop will do, it will give us all of the selected members and put them into this selected members list, which we then can check if it's empty or not. So here, if the selected members list dot size is greater than 0, then what we want to do is we want to add back the plus item, so to speak. So selected members list dot add is going to be a new selected members object which has an empty ID and an empty image. So we'll use the plus icon here. Then TV underscore selected members dot visibility should be view dot gone. So the select members view should be gone, and we need to import view here. Then the recycler view select members list should be visible. So visibility is equal to view dot visible. And then the recycler view selected members list should also get a layout manager and get an adapter and all of those things, right? So everything that we prepared up till this point. And what I want to use here is a grid layout manager this time. So I'm not using a linear layout manager as we have done before, but this time I'm using a grid layout manager. So I'm gonna pass in the context and then the span count, which should be 6. So I want to be able to display up to 6 elements next to each other. So that's what the grid layout will be. And then we need to create an adapter object that we can assign it to this recycler view. Okay, so val adapter will be a card members list adapter. So that's the one that we just prepared. Let me see how exactly I called it. Card member list adapter, or member list item adapter. Member list items adapter, which needs the context and the list that it should display. And it's the selected members list here. Okay, so that's the adapter. And now we can assign that adapter to our recycler view. Okay, so the adapter should be the adapter that we just prepared. And now I want to add an on-click listener to that adapter so that we can use the on-click events that we prepared in there. Okay, because we have this on-click listener and we want to run something once we click on an element inside of our card members list items. All right, so what do we need to pass in here? Well, a new object of this interface. So object card members list items adapter dot on click listener, and here we override the on click event in which we now want to display our members list dialog function, which is the function that we prepared just recently. So here you can see members list dialog. In there we wanted to display some stuff. As you can see, we still need to do the on item selected, but overall we're getting forward. Okay, so that is if the list size is greater than 0. What should happen if the list size is 0, so not greater than 0? Well, then this else block should be executed. So here, else my TV selected members, or select members visibility should be set to visible. So view dot visible, and then my recycler view should be made invisible. So here visibility should be set to view dot gone. Okay, so this was quite some code. There was some repetitive code that we have used before, and I just wanted to go over it in a little more depth this time again, because sometimes I feel like they are really the same, but sometimes it's a little different, so I want to go a little more into detail. But let's have a quick break here and finish this feature off in the next video. So see you there.